Sorry, it sounded like I was muted. Apologize for that. And couldn't get out of it while my screen was going. Okay, back to the beginning. We're defining user experience tonight. Welcome to our intro to user experience design course, day 3. Day 1, we talked about the history of user experience design, and we jumped into the discovery process in the product design cycle. Now we're jumping into the definition phase of the product design cycle. The definition phase invites us to articulate clearly who our product is intended to help, and it is a time to define and describe the circumstances surrounding the objectives and motivations of our product users. And by clearly articulating these objectives and motivations, we begin to have the ability to craft good solutions. This allows us to better understand and empathize with our potential users, and it also helps us to be unified as a design and development team in justifying the design solutions that emerge and the decisions that we're making. So, a little analogy here. When we read, our eye doesn't move smoothly across the page from left to right. As those who speak English, left to the right is the mode we go. Even though it seems like we're making smooth transition across the page in our minds, our eyes are actually jumping from the right to the left, back to the left to the right again, little micro movements called saccades. The movement helps orient the reader to the context of the word they're currently reading and then anticipates future texts. The same thing happens when we're looking at people's faces. We don't just focus on one element, our eyes move around from part to part. The product development cycle, I kind of think of each of these elements, we act as saccades between these different parts of the cycle. We move forward in the cycle, but we often must jump back or forward in order to be better informed for moving forward in the design process. So it's not a smooth flow from one phase to the next. There's always some overlap. So I just want you to keep that in mind as we go through these trainings, that you may sort of understand that it's, and I've mentioned it before, and I just want to keep reiterating it, that it's a kind of a smooth cycle. It's not a smooth cycle that goes deliberately from one to the next. It jumps around. As much as possible, as designers, we should be seeking out information about our users that will allow us to make these informed design decisions that we're talking about for the designs that they will be using. That is what the discovery phase is meant to do. Today, we're going to discuss a few tools that help you make sense of and communicate the data that you gather during the discovery phase. First, personas and proto-personas are two tools that can help you articulate what your users are like. Personas are statistically derived. Through survey data, analytics data, and other market research data, personas can be constructed as an aggregate of segments of your user base. And this is how we use the quantitative data that we gather during the discovery phase many times. For example, let's say you design a product and experiences for a mail order shaving company. You know that one of your primary user segments consists of African-American males of average of age of 23 with an annual income of $27,000. Most members of this segment live in the Midwest of the United States, and most 80% are in a relationship of some kind but are not married. And from this data, you can create an individual to represent that aggregate. And I should mention that this is totally made up information that I just pulled out of my head. So don't rely on this for future research. So what does a persona look like? I like to usually grab a photograph of somebody, ideally not a stock photo that looks very posed, but something that kind of captures the essence of who this person might be. So we might give this person a name, Deshaun Jackson, age 24, within that range of our aggregated data, 26,000 annual income, pretty close to the aggregated average, who lives in San Antonio, Texas, just pulling a city, highly populated city out of the region where these people are from, works in customer service call center for United Services Automobile Association. That's just taking a quite likely possibility for a high employer in that city of that age and demographic. Has a steady girlfriend he's lived with for 2 years in an apartment. And he's always had trouble with ingrown beard whiskers and found the balm you send with your razors really helpful in reducing the number of ingrown hairs. And Deshaun found out about Steady Shave through a Facebook ad. So this represents what a persona is and what you can refer to as a designer. It will be somewhere for you to look and reflect against when you design. And you think, what would Deshaun want? How would Deshaun use our product? What other help does Deshaun need that we could fix? Working from real data gives you the best possible scenario for creating usable designs. But it's important to remember as a designer that aggregated data, although covering the majority of users, is necessarily incomplete. For example, for every 5 users, one of them is not going to be in a relationship. And you can't forget completely about the people that don't fall into the top of the bell curve. But using a persona to design will end up giving you better results than designing without one in most cases. Unless you are the user yourself, where you know what the user needs. So let's talk a little bit about the proto-persona compared to the persona. Sometimes you can't get access to the aggregated and sufficient data that's statistically accurate to have a statistically derived persona. The proto-persona is the next best thing. With a proto-persona, much of the information you're gathering, you're able to create a profile that's similar to the persona that we just talked about, but in the case of the proto-persona, much of the information is conjectural, and it's based on intuition or stakeholder input rather than hard data. The proto-persona is more risky than a persona, as the data is not validated in any way, but in the absence of validated data, using a proto-persona becomes a tentpole support of your design. And if you don't have data enough for persona, then a proto-persona is usually going to be your next best bet. A proto-persona can surface assumptions to the team. As you create a proto-persona, you're going to run into questions that you say, we don't really know this, and that can give you impetus to say, we need to find out, because otherwise it's a really big risk if we don't know this information and we're designing for. It allows you as a designer to take a stand for better information. So a proto-persona, in most cases, is going to look very similar to a persona. I've done some different ages and income and just been a little more generic about the relationship, just to give you a sense that this, as a proto-persona, is not going to be as detailed or as accurate necessarily, or than a persona. One note I should say about some of the information, like at the bottom of the page, about has always had trouble with ingrown hairs, or that he found out about Steady Shave through a Facebook ad. Those are the types of details that you would get from a user interview, kind of like the ones that we did after class yesterday. Those details can flesh out a persona because you get the statistically accurate information from the analytics, but you can get storytelling type of details from an actual interview, from an actual customer. And that really fleshes out the power of a persona, giving it some accurate user-derived information. Now let's talk about a journey map. With a persona or a proto-persona established, designers will often move to create a user journey map. Creating a user journey map is extremely valuable to guide the product designer. Creating a map of our user's experience with the full context of their lives and how that fits around the product we're designing helps us empathize with the frustrations and opportunities that they're facing. It also helps us better anticipate the objectives that our users have and what is currently helping them with achieving those objectives, and it opens the door for innovation to help them meet those objectives. Using the information you have gleaned from your user research, you begin to build out the journey, going through the process opens your eyes to gaps in your understanding. It reveals questions you need to answer in order to move forward, and highlights assumptions you're making that need to be verified or at least acknowledged. So let's talk about this example that I've grabbed here, just posted up. This was just one that I grabbed from the internet doing a user journey map example search. But it gives you a good sense of what a journey map might entail. And just like I showed you with the product map, or sorry, the product cycle earlier, there's so many different ways that people use these. And if you search for them, there's no two that are exactly alike. So keep that in mind, that you can adapt this tool to what you need at the time. But let's go through how this journey map works. So on the top, we have John Quincy. He's a persona, or a proto-persona. And you would have a separate document like the one that I was just showing you for personas and proto-personas that a person could reference and then understand who John Quincy is, what he's like, and why we're doing this journey about him. So this journey then represents his path through this product. So this is for a product called Little Wing, an airline. On the left-hand column are actions, what they're thinking, what they're feeling, and then expectation ratings, which I'm not going to talk that much about today because it doesn't match how I've done things in the past. But then opportunities is at the bottom. Each of these subjects is a swim lane across this diagram. Actions represent the things that people would do associated with your product or application. And so you try to think any action that they would take and associate it with that topic. Above, across the top, in those tabs are basically periods of time or scenarios in which the user would interact with your product across a specific timeline. In this case, it goes from researching travel to researching a specific airline to booking a flight to pre-travel experiences to traveling experiences, and then to the in-flight travel experience. So each of these swim lanes addresses items within that topical category. So under actions, we talk about things that they do. Under thinking, we talk about things that they're thinking as they take those actions, or as they anticipate taking those actions. The feelings, we try to either conjecture or through our research represent how a person has felt or does feel at a specific time. So, for example, when doing user research, if you're able to do some ethnographic type research, a contextual inquiry, for example, then you would actually watch people become frustrated at a specific action that they're taking. And so you would be able to use the real data that you're seeing in actual people to be able to do that. Sometimes you just have your interviews or other observational data that you have to be able to build out what that feeling is. And sometimes you can actually ask people. There's lots of ways to gather that information, but for a user journey map, you want to be able to attribute emotional states to every action and what they're thinking. And I'll be able to demonstrate a little bit about how using that will be able to benefit you as a designer in a second when we go over doing this as an example. So for the feeling, you're assigning the emotional state to those actions above in that particular phase of the journey. The opportunities is an area where you can jot down ideas that you have as you're creating this journey map. So for an example, the first column, research travel. John Quincy will research flight options on travel sites and notice good options from Little Wing. He'll save preferred flight options to his list. Under thinking, you would associate those thinking with what he's doing at that time. So I hope I can find a convenient flight at a good price. So as he's researching, that's what we feel like he's thinking. He's also thinking flight options and prices from Little Wing are good, but I'm not familiar with this airline. So that begins to get into what his thought processes might be about not knowing what this airline is like. So the emotional states decided to those two points were excited about a regional airline with great options and prices. So he sees that those prices from Little Wings, and they raises his emotional state to good. It's happy. When he's not sure about the airline, there's that apprehension. So we have both emotional states sort of vying for each other. It's good for a designer to know how a person is feeling, because then you can create either text or experiences that can help alleviate the concern and amplify the excited emotional state. So for opportunities there at the bottom, they said invest in increasing awareness among frequent travelers. So they're saying that because we're going through this process, we realize that maybe John Quincy doesn't know about the airline, so we need to invest in promoting it. The other one is to continue to offer competitive prices, because you know that the good prices are making him excited. Then make sure that the business model can sustain that and keep offering lower prices to build that kind of excitement. So another example, second column. We won't go through the whole thing today, but just a little bit more. Under actions, it says take a chance to Google Little Wing and then check out the Little Wing website. So those are two actions that the person making this chart believed that he would take. So what is he thinking as he's Googling? I wonder if Little Wing is safe and reliable. And then some thinking, wow, there are some great customer reviews of Little Wing, and Little Wing's website feels contemporary and customer focused. So the things that an existing site would benefit from are those reviews and a good visual design. So what is he feeling at this point? So he's Googled, he's had some question about the quality of the airline. He sees some evidence of the quality and builds that confidence about trying Little Wing. He's happy, he's impressed. So ideas that come from that, opportunities. One was to leverage positive customer reviews to build brand awareness and customer loyalty. And two, monitor customer experience feedback via social media sources and leverage positive reviews. So I want to mention at this point, as we've been going through this user journey map, you may notice that there's a lot of elements about this that are not very digital interface focused. This is where having a tool set like this really broadens your ability to make a big impact in an organization outside of just an interface level design. Certainly user experience designers are often the user interface designers, and that's an important function. But having tools like being able to use a user journey map opens up opportunities to make contributions and ideas and provide value to a company, because you're beginning to see not only the end point of the digital interface, but also opportunities earlier in the process where we can make recommendations to marketing or to the business owners about where to invest money and that sort of thing. So a user journey map is not solely for digital interface design. It is for any business to be able to build out and strengthen its offering and service, its product, for its customer base. So with that under our belt, let's actually go through and try to do a user journey map. So I'm going to stop sharing this screen for a minute and start sharing another. Okay. All right, this is just a sketched version of a user journey map. When you're creating a user journey map, you're going to go through kind of a rough draft phase and continually refine it. And many times as a user experience designer, the opportunity arises for you to actually hold a meeting with stakeholders and have everybody's input and build the user experience journey map together and be able to get all of their input as you're going, rather than having to do it on a solo. And it's a great skill to develop, being able to lead that kind of a session where we can iterate through those. And so today I'm just going to use this sketch of a user journey map to talk through the idea behind a shaving company like we were talking before. So we made a persona, and his name was Deshaun Jackson. So we know some of the information about him. He's employed at USAA in San Antonio, Texas. He's 23 years old, makes about $27,000 a year. And so we kind of have a sense of who Deshaun is. So we know, okay, this is his journey map with dealing with shaving. So for the timeline, I just jot some timeline ideas. So discovery, how does he find out about the company? First hears about it. Investigating is the next phase. And after that, adoption. And then for a company, the concern would be with retention for him. Now, this is what the company would want to be concerned about and making the product. And as the user designer making this user journey, you sort of align those timelines with the events that happen in his life. So we think we're a shaving company. What might be the discovery impetus for him? So in our thinking about this, we know he had ingrown hairs. At some point, that ingrown hair issue was causing him trouble, and so he begins to think, how can I solve that solution? So he is going to go to the internet, does a search, Googles it, whatever. He might use his mobile device. Because of his demographic, many of them don't actually have laptop or desktop computers, and so he's probably going to be on his mobile device. He does a voice search. Let's Google. He says, think about what is he going to search for? He's probably going to search ingrown solutions or something. Sounds like a dumb word to use. I don't know. What would he say? But you have a chance to think about lots of different opportunities. So ingrown solutions, he Googles it. And because of that, he ends up on Facebook seeing an ad. So there might be multiple touch points at this point where he's getting opportunities to learn about this company. Searching mobile, the search fields of ingrown, the Facebook ad. He might have a peer that he talks to. I don't know whether those young men at that age would talk about their beards. I don't know. But something to think about. Is that a possibility? And if we think, is that really a possibility? Do a little asterisk and say, maybe more research to see if that's a viable place to kind of promote people promoting this product. So we decide from Facebook ad that as he's investigating, he clicks this ad. So in his journey, the next step is he sees an advertising, and where does that ad take him? So as a user experience designer, our opportunity there becomes think, what is that experience that he has jumping from the ad to the website? Do we know what the ad says, and does it ring true with whatever we provide on that landing page, that marketing page? So let's go back before we get too much farther into this investigation side of things. And we're going to talk about the thoughts that he might be having. So he's searching ingrown hairs, and he thinks, will I ever shave painlessly? This is something that's a pretty big issue. And at this point, I'd say he's got a pretty sad sad face. So for my feelings, my emotional thing, I'm just using these icons to represent how he feels at any given point. He does a search, sees some ingrown solutions. He's tried some, nothing really works. He sees the Facebook ad maybe, and he thinks, hey, there's an opportunity here. I wonder what this is all about. So maybe his face goes to neutral. At that point, he's investigating, and so he's not so sad. He's beginning to get happy. He sees an ad. He clicks over to the ad, and the website says, free trial of our product. Free trial? Yeah, he's super happy. So you can see that this feelings area can actually be a really good graphical representation of the user flow. Over time, as you fill this out, you'll have these fluctuations in their experience. And you know that anywhere there's a dip, where their emotional experience goes down, that means, oh, this is an opportunity for us as a company to create a design, a solution, an interface, or a product, or anything like that that will help make their journey through this process that much better. So I'm going to erase that for a second because we're not going there. So he clicks on the ad and he gets to the website. So as a user experience designer, we would say our responsibility is going to be the information architecture. How easy is that application, that website going to be to navigate? Do they have a clear call to action? Are they going to see something that's going to be useful for them? Is it a messaging that matches the ad? All of those things are of concern to the user experience designer. So as we go through this journey mapping exercise, we begin to see, hey, this is an area that we need to focus on, we need to pay attention to, because there's a possibility of a huge gap in the experience between the ad and the website. If those don't line up and those don't match, you could lose a significant portion of the people who click through. They don't like what they're seeing. So the website, you might have a free trial option that we talked about. That was what would make him super happy. His thoughts are, free trial can't hurt, but because there's no such thing as a free lunch, you might be thinking, what's the catch? So you try to get into his shoes and you think, okay, so he's thinking, oh, free trial, but is he thinking, what's in it for the company? What are they going to do? Are they going to take all of my information? Are you going to charge my credit card if I don't cancel? All that stuff is going to go through his head. And so as a user experience designer, you're designing this site, you say, okay, we might capture more users and make more money if we require them to enter a credit card. You know, some companies do that, but is it a better experience, and thus we feel better as a company and still can make money if we don't require that up front? We give them a product that they really love and they'll come back. You know, there's pros and cons, business decisions that you weigh in on, and the user experience team can provide information and do additional research based on this information in order to help justify and explain and give reasoning for decisions that the company will have to invest in. Okay, so free trial, he signs up. So we move into adoption and its sign up phase. When he signs up, he's thinking maybe a little bit more of that, what's the catch? Here, he's sort of, I don't know, am I happy? Is this good? But then he sees on the sign up form, all he has to do is enter his email and his mailing address, and we'll send out a free package. And we provide full, actually I don't need to write that there, but a full description on the website of what we're providing. So that makes him super happy. And then the user experience, there could be delayed delivery. And so this is where a user journey map can be useful for an existing product, but it also can be useful for a product that doesn't exist yet. As you do a user journey map for something that exists, you will be able to actually talk to the customer service department, for example, and actually see where there are hangups or problems that people are facing, and you'd be able to put them as touch points. They might see a customer service rep at this point. They give them a call because they didn't get their order or their order was wrong. And so we see opportunities there. Every touch point that they have with the company, with the product or related products, or maybe someone even tangential to that product or company, we enter all that into the journey map. Eventually we have a flow of what the status of the person is. We can see areas where we might want to focus. If we have a delightful thing, sort of call attention to it, or a problem where they're really unhappy, focus here. And all the time, there's opportunities to write ideas down here at the bottom. Finally, retention. If you're thinking about the customer service issue, a delayed delivery, you would then take that those events and say, is there something where we could fill the gap between the sign up and the delayed delivery that might help delight the customer, make their journey a little bit better? You look for holes in that journey map, places here. Is there a way that we can insert ourselves that helps make it easier, or is there an extra step that we could remove? This is the value of the journey map, to go through this process step by step. And as I said, taking 3 hours to a full day to actually go through this with a group, using sticky notes to represent each of these things, like the feelings, the thoughts. You have each person put on a sticky note and put them all up there and sort of group them together. It's a very powerful tool at understanding your users and being able to articulate it. Once you've done this exercise, you've done the rough draft, you sort of debated about different parts of it, you've seen where you need to do additional research, it's often a good time to go back to that user journey map and then create a digital version that's shareable within the company, something that other people can reference, that's a little bit easier to comprehend than this kind of scribble thing that I've done here. By then making a final draft of the user journey document, it becomes an artifact that you can use to justify design decisions, explain opportunities to C-level folks. Whatever the opportunity is, this becomes a great tool for that. So we're going to step away from the user journey and talk about user stories now. Stop sharing that. And go back to our document. All right, user stories. User stories have been a basic product design tool for many years. They help create a list of actions and their associated objectives for users. And typically user stories are driven by assumptions made about the users, but hopefully they are derived from personas and from our user journey map, so that they're based on more on data than just conjecture. So the format of a traditional user story is, as a persona, I want to take this action so that I can have an expected outcome. For example, as an office manager, I want to be able to keep a list of all employees' contact information so I can quickly find any employee's phone number. Another example, as a single mother of 4, I want to get my shopping done quickly so that I can avoid being in the store with 4 restless children longer than I have to. And as a single mother of 4, I want to tap a button on an app so that all my children will be obedient 100% of the time.
Hey, Christian?
That's right there. Yes, sir.
You're not sharing your screen.
Oh, am I not?
No, I just see you.
Oh, I bet that was boring. Ha! So I apologize. Thanks for letting me know.
Now we can see your screen.
Great. Okay, so those would probably be a little bit easier to see than just to hear me say. I'll read through those again. As an office manager, I want to be able to keep a list of all employees' contact information so I can quickly find any employee's phone number. As a single mother of 4, I want to get my shopping done quickly so that I can avoid being in a store with 4 restless children longer than I have to. And as a single mother of 4, I want to tap a button on an app so that all my children will be obedient 100% of the time. User stories can be helpful both in the design of a product as well as communicating the intent of a design to the development team and to the stakeholders. Let's pause and talk about design tools for a minute. The best designers are those who can think critically about what they're doing. They're empathetic and seek to understand the user's point of view, as I've mentioned many times. They need to understand the situations they're designing for deeply enough that they can balance business needs against user needs and even against the status quo of other similar designs. The tools we use are simply tools. Like a hammer, I might prefer a sledgehammer for some jobs, a framing hammer for others, or a ball peen hammer for other purposes. All of the jobs involve striking a surface with something, a heavy object, but there are nuances to each application. And these UX tools are similar that we're talking about. We have job stories and user stories and user journey maps. People use them in different ways. There's no one true way to do design, but having this toolkit where you know how to use these tools is important. Having a knowledge of the tools, the other tools people use, and of the vernacular so you can communicate with other team members, these are important things. So let's take an example of some of the nuance of user stories. A user story might sound something like this. As a guy who gets a lot of ingrown hairs, I want to be able to have a shaving lotion that softens the skin so my whiskers can penetrate to the surface more easily. That story is very specific about an attribute or quality of the lotion and the physical results of its application on the skin. It's a completely valid story. But let's consider another story by comparison. As a man in a long-term relationship, I want to have a smooth face so my girlfriend will not complain about me having pokey skin. This story is very emotionally based. Essentially, both stories are getting at the same thing, but taking a different route to get there. It is really beneficial for you to think about the way you approach using the tools in order to get better at using them. So in user experience design, taking an emotional approach can often be a much more powerful way to create an experience or a design that is used and useful and desired by people. But sometimes it's very important to be very functional in the way that you address user stories in order to be clear about what steps need to happen in order to complete something. So just another thing to keep in mind. So speaking of these nuanced tools, let's talk about job stories. Job stories emerged as an alternative adaptation of user stories, and they're sort of in vogue right now. Rather than being based on a persona and an aggregate of people, job stories are meant to be based and written based on actual feedback from actual users. They're written in a slightly different format based on situations and circumstances rather than on demographics or a persona. As a reminder, jobs to be done theory was popularized by business professor Clay Christiansen and is primarily a marketing innovation theory. We talked about that a little bit yesterday. It has been adopted in product and UX design as a useful tool for helping innovate on a product or experience. The sticky idea of jobs to be done theory is that all products have been hired to do a job for the customer. A hammer has been hired to drive nails, but that might be too simplistic of an understanding of the actual job to be done, because some hammers cause greater fatigue or muscle strain when used than other hammers. Someone buying a hammer might actually be trying to do the job of driving nails while also not making their shoulder hurt at the end of the long workday. In marketing, the application would be apparent. You would want to market the hammer based on being able to play with your kids at the end of the day without feeling the strain that your current hammer is causing you. In product design, digital products, our discovery efforts should be aimed at helping find our customers jobs that they want to be done. Job stories help articulate those needs in the context of the user's actual experience. So the difference here with a job story is that it is framed based on a situation as opposed to a demographic or a persona. So when triggering event or situation happens, I want to achieve an objective or do a task so that I can have an intended outcome. As I mentioned, job stories should represent real stories, real scenarios gleaned from real customer interviews. And the more context you have for the triggering event, the stronger your design recommendation can be. So a couple of examples. First, when I shave with a non-electric razor, I want to take care of my skin and whisker follicles so I can prevent ingrown hairs. Second example, when my razor gets dull, I want to have a fresh razor on hand so I can get a clean shave right away. A couple of things to note about these job story examples. In the first one, we have been specific with the scenario of shaving with a non-electric razor for clarity. The task is to care for the skin, with the job being done to avoid ingrown hairs. There's no specificity about what to do about the skin, no mention of lotions, creams, or oils. Those things might be the right solution eventually, but during the definition phase, we want to avoid specifying the types of solutions to make room for creativity and innovative solutions to solve the problem during the ideation phase. The job, as listed in the user story right now, is to prevent ingrown hairs, but there's the possibility that it might go deeper to an underlying job that has more emotional impact. For example, the job might actually be, I want to avoid the unsightly red bumps that come with ingrown hairs. It's maybe a social pressure concern. Or another example, it might be that I want to avoid the pain that comes with ingrown hairs. That's a more physical concern. But it could be even both. But the point of these stories is to help expose the design team to the real motivation for certain decisions and the ultimate social and psychological driving forces that will inform the design solutions. So for a few minutes, let's demonstrate writing a couple of user stories. Hopefully you're seeing the document here on my screen.
Yeah, we see like a notepad or text.
Text edit, great. Perfect. So just grabbing from the notes that were shared on Slack about the shopping experience. So there's an event where someone will go to a store and forget to use a gift card. So a job story might be, when I'm shopping, I would like to remember I have a gift card so I don't have to pay for my purchase at full price. So there's an example of what I might take as a first stab for writing a user story based on one of the insights that someone gained. So this becomes a tool in design that says, okay, so we know someone is out shopping and they've apparently forgotten a gift card in the past. And so what can we design? What kind of solutions that we might provide to people that will help them avoid this in the future? If we're the store itself, we could say, all right, our customers come in, we want to help them out and use their gift card. That might not be in the best interest of the store, I don't know, but that's one thing that as an experienced designer, we provide things that we can say, this would be really great for the users, and then we can go back and balance the decision. So a solution might be, we put up signs, have a gift card, pull it out, or something like that. So that's how user stories can help in the design definition phase. So another issue that was raised was that someone might walk out of the store because the line was too long. Let's do this as a user story as opposed to a job story. So as a shopper persona, I want to be able to find an open lane so can shop more quickly. All right, so this is just, me looking at this note and thinking, how does this fit in as a user story? A shopper persona, I want to be able to find an open lane so I can shop more quickly. I'm assigning a motivation to them, and that's something that, for me, coming to these notes, that's very conjectural as to that's the motivation they have there. But that's just a way that would work. So let's do one more, and then I'll talk about the assignment for tonight. Okay, so someone has another one looking, they look to buy things based on style, not by brand. So when I'm shopping for shoes, I want to be able to see the shoe before seeing the brand, so I can make a style-based decision. And there's no right or wrong user story. There's better or worse. I don't know that these are all exceptional examples, but as a user experience designer, being able to get into the practice of thinking critically about why people are doing things, what is their motivation, what is the job that they hope to get done. And this is an example of how I might do that with that concern that somebody had. So those are user stories and job stories, another tool in your tool belt for user experience design. Many times when people in product design teams, you'll write user stories as specifications for the developers to build from as well. So there's a state at which we're writing more generic user stories that are less specified, and there might be a later stage at which we become very granular about what the user should be able to accomplish with a specific story, so that as we communicate to the developers our design intent, they can very clearly see the user needs to be able to do this, and I need to develop it, and we need to have the high fidelity designs created in such a way that achieves that objective. Because then we can use the user stories as acceptance testing for those products. When they've been developed, we say, does it answer this user story? If it does, then we've achieved the objective. If it doesn't, then we haven't. All right, so for our assignment for day 3, we're going to have you create a user journey document based on the shopping information from the interviews that you had yesterday and from your group discussions. And if you have not actually done any group discussions, somehow missed the first 2 classes, you can use some of the notes that people have put into Slack, or you can just base it on your own personal shopping experience. But what we want you to do is to use this template that's on the step below. I've just put all of the information in this template, and so you can just type in, duplicate this. That's not what I wanted to do. Duplicate this assignment and just type in it the things that you think about through the flow. Get as much information as you can. Create your own persona in your mind, just a proto-persona, just as basic as you can. Just type it out here. And then go through the steps of awareness, consideration, decision, and post-experience. Think about all of the touch points, the timeline, the thoughts that they're thinking, and the feelings that they're having as they think those thoughts. So for example, if I put in the ingrown hair is bugging me, then I might put an X here to say he's, I wouldn't put it there because he's not excited. I put him under angry or unhappy. Say this is at a, just go through this, add columns. You can create, if you want to do something like what I did with my tablet, that's perfectly fine. But what we want you to be able to do is to share this somehow in your group discussion. So you'll be able to talk about, each person can present some of the things that they went through as they created this journey map. And as you do that, then you can share with each other any insights or ideas that you had that somebody else didn't have, or maybe see opportunities where something was left out. So I'd really love to have you guys go through this process of thinking through every step and then sharing it during your group discussions. All right, so I am going to go ahead and answer questions now. This assignment, I'll grab the link and post it in Slack. So there it's in Slack, so you should be able to grab it there. And then let's look at some questions, if we can answer. Someone asked, could you spell synods? I think if you're talking about the eye movement, it's saccades, S-A-C-C-A-D-E-S. And I'm not sure, oh yes, it's S-A-C-C-A-D-E-S, I believe. The next question is, can a part of it imaginary? As during the interview, I did not have much insights regarding the feeling. So if you mean in the user journey, the feelings and the emotions that are attached, that definitely can be conjectural, especially for this exercise. One of the things that as a user experience designer you want is to be as accurate as possible. So if you get in there and you're doing a user journey map and you're just assigning emotions associated with it, if you get to a point where there's something that you want to focus on and the emotions you have assigned to it are conjectural, that would be a signal to me to say, you know what, we're making a big assumption here. If we design our whole product based on that assumption, we run a risk of it being completely garbage. So what I would say is I need to do some interviews or some observation and see if this emotion is true. If it is, then let's move forward with the product. If it's not, then we can come back to the drawing board. So imaginary is great. Just realize that any assumption you make, any conjecture you do, you have to be able to justify it if it's going to influence business decisions. The riskier the decision, the more research you need to do. So another question is the difference between proto-persona and persona, just the level of detail. The difference between persona and proto-persona is not necessarily level of detail as much as it is whether your persona is statistically derived. That is, it's based on enough data that you can justifiably extrapolate from that data to make an average user. In reality, there's no average user, but the persona can represent a huge portion of the user base based on demographics or that statistical information. So it's that statistically derived difference. The proto-persona is more or less conjectural, but could have a lot of user data in it, so it might actually be accurate to one or two users' experience. It just won't be statistically justifiable, if that makes sense. Okay, Maitran, what I meant is the interview yesterday, I did not have that much insight regarding the feelings. And that's fine. If in the interview there weren't many insights, then take this opportunity in doing the user flow, user journey map. Do it through your own imagination, what you would think as yourself as a shopper. You can certainly use your own experience, and it's perfectly reasonable to use your own experience as a user experience designer. The danger you come into if you're using your own experience is that if you're not the target audience, then you can be skewed off from what they experience. And so it's always a juggling act of how much information can you get, how much do you have to guess. And sometimes as a product owner, the leadership won't actually invest in very much research, so you have to do the best with what you can. So, let's see, I think that's all of the additional questions that I can see online. Cool. All right, so I'm going to sign off. I'm going to make sure that assignment document is in the place where you can all access it if you haven't been able to. And thanks for being here tonight. Hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you next time tomorrow.